Support for Amplified Voices comes from the Restorative Action Foundation. Learn more at restorativeactionalliance.org.
Everyone has a voice, a story to tell. Some are marginalized and muted. What if there were a way to amplify those stories, to have conversations with real people in real communities, a way to help them step into the power of their lived experience? Welcome to Amplified Voices, a podcast lifting the experiences of people and families impacted by the criminal legal system. Together, we can create positive change for everyone.
Hello, and welcome to Amplified Voices. I'm your host, Jason, here with my co-host, Amber. Good morning, Amber.
Good morning, Jason.
And this morning we have LaResse Harvey. Hi, LaResse.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Nice to be here.
Good morning, LaResse.
It's great to have you here. We're going to start with our same first question that we've been asking all of our guests, and that is, could you tell us a little bit about your life before you entered the criminal legal system and what brought you into it?
Prior to my incarceration, growing up, I was sexually abused by my parents from the ages 2 to 5. And my father learned what he did not think it was wrong. One night, my mom came home early from work and caught my father. She called my other sisters to her, and she looked at me. I said, "Ooh, Mom, you're home. Come on, I'm like all excited that she's there because now I'm thinking I'm saving my family. And I'm like, God sent them to keep the love together and the marriage together, whatever, sent me rather. And my mother looks at me and she says, "You're disgusting. Get dressed. We're going to my mother's house." So my other two sisters are standing in a doorway. My oldest sister, she was hugging at her side. My baby sister, she had in her arms and was like patting her head down. But me, I was no longer her daughter. I became the other woman.
I got to slow you down here. So, whoa, when we talked about this is the first time we've talked with someone where the abuse started so young and where, there was no beginning for it. It just starts right away from your earliest memories. And so First I have to say, I'm really sorry that happened to you. That's number one. Number two is I've got to take a moment to process what you're saying. I think Amber is processing what you're saying. I can see it in her eyes. We don't even know what questions to ask to be respectful of you.
I wrote a book about it called Button's Journey, my first 2 years living with PTSD. And although it won't give you the in-depth, response I'm about to give you, it does shine light on what happened to me growing up that led me to prison. And that's my first experience with sexual abuse. It doesn't end there. It just begins there.
That's the beginning. So if that's how you're starting and it goes from there, wow. And so, the fact that we're sitting here looking at you as an adult woman who we know has done so many amazing things, and we'll get to all of that. But it's thank God you're with us and you're here and you've agreed to talk with us today.
I do also want to take a moment to acknowledge just kind of what you started to share, because it definitely merits acknowledgement. And for me, one of the things that really struck me was the idea of this generational cycle, that this was just what was done. And how is anyone to know as a child, or anyone to know as someone who has grown up with that cycle, that this is not a healthy way to interact? And I am very sorry that that was the beginning. And I really appreciate you sharing it. And I would like to continue to hear about this journey. And I definitely have to get the book on my reading list. So please continue.
Well, I didn't know anything was wrong until my mom looked at me. And then from that point on, it gets like I became her I became the mistress of the family.
And how
I
old were
was
you?
5.
You were
I was 5.
5 when she looked at you and said, "You're disgusting," and you're just doing what you're trying to please
What
your
I always
parents.
done with them. What I've
Yeah,
always done.
and trying
I
to
didn't
please
know. I thought it was love.
and trying to please your parents, right? So, and so she says you're disgusting. I mean, do you remember what went on in your brain at that point, what you were thinking, and how you were feeling, or is that too far back?
No, I remember because I carried with me throughout my majority of my life. I remember, what did I do wrong, and why is mommy so mad at me? So from that moment, I didn't understand. And then about a year, almost a year later, I had to testify. Now we're talking 1977, where I was born in 72. So we're talking in the 70s. So we're not talking 2021. We're talking 1970s, even though I know for sure some of this stuff still happens present day, but we're talking in the 70s. And women, really didn't have a say too much about anything. And I remember they closed the courtroom. It was my mother, my father, the judge, my grandmother, and a prosecutor. And the judge looked at me, and I had to swear on the Bible, and I was all excited because I'm going to tell the world about how I'm the superstar of the family and how I'm saving my family to keeping them together. And I am the love charm. I make it happen. That's how my little sister got here, So I'm ready to tell the story, like how my father and mother loved me the most, right? So the judge looks at me. He was like, "LaResse, can you tell me about your special time with your dad?" "Just my dad, not with my mom?" "No, just with your dad." "Okay, but my mommy's there too." Like, I was confused. And so the judge, he didn't even acknowledge that I was saying my mom too. He only acknowledged my dad. So I never got to tell the whole story on the stand. All I said was, well, one day mommy came home from work and daddy had his finger in my privates like he always do. We played the game. It's the love game. And he was telling me in my ear how much he loved me and how this is helping out the family so much. And I'm such a good girl. I knew I did something wrong because the judge, who was a white man, turned beet red and looked at me in horror. Like, I'll never forget his face. Like, it was just like, oh, you dear child kind of thing. And then I became shameful. I felt shame instantly, like, oh my God, I'm not special. I'm not, the superhero in the family. I gotta make up for this. Like, instantly,
Right.
It was my duty to protect the family because I'm the one that messed up. I messed up the love, right? I'm the love fixer and I messed up the love. And how the court did it was they gave full custody to my father during the divorce. And my father had to transfer all parental rights to my grandmother.
I see.
And my grandmother, and that was so that my grandmother would get the child support payments directly to raise me and my sisters. Now, the judge also, and it's written in the documents, that we were never to have private, individual, or group contact with either parent alone. And as we know, as I go forward, I'm going to stop, that did not happen. My mother was never supposed to have us again. So 2 years after the divorce, I'm now 7.5, going on 8. And my mother meets a guy and we move in Bristol. We live on Union Street in Bristol. So he's doing stuff to my older sister. I catch him. I start beating him with a wiffle ball bat. And I tell her, my little sister, run in the bathroom, call Grams, call the cops, come tell grandma, come get us.
How old are you at this point?
I am 8 years old.
Okay.
And I beat them. I'm beating them. They're in the bathroom. they're trying to call, but in the bathroom, we're so scared of my mom and what she's going to do by calling grandma, telling her what's going on in the house, because what's going in her house, stay in her house, you don't say none, you about to get murked if grandma finds out. So they're in the bathroom negotiating. He grabs me by my throat. He holds me down with one hand. I'm skinny. Like I weigh like, maybe a buck, right? And I was a skinny, athletic little girl, and I was a tomboy. So I was like the aggressor. So when he grabbed me by my throat and held me down on the couch, he took his left hand and he ripped off my shorts. It was summertime. And he ripped off my shorts and he had sex with me. And it wasn't
wait. I just want to use the right language here.
Yes.
He raped you.
He raped me, but I didn't know how PG-13 or whatever. But, I could be graphic. I'm just trying to be, respectful for the ears.
Appreciate that.
He raped me. And when I was being raped, and my little sister, she looked through the door and said, he's putting his thing in her. Call grandma. I don't care. I'll get a beating. I can hear this. So they, he gets up and he was like, and you think you tough? I bet you ain't you want to be a boy? You think you a boy? I was like, I'm not a boy. I'm a little girl. No, you think you tough now? Now you a woman. He leaves. My mother never comes. My grandmother comes. She's, because my sisters is screaming, he's hitting her. He's doing something awful to her, grandma. We don't know what he's doing, but it's not nice. My grandmother comes with my uncles, my grandfather, they ready to, throw down. And we come downstairs. I take a shower. We get dressed. We have our overnight bags. I come downstairs smiling and happy like nothing happened to me. Story of my life. I know how to pretend to be happy over some horrendous circumstances.
But that was survival at that point for you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So but it's got to be eating you on the inside completely.
Oh, I had rage that, my rage, is scary. My rage is very scary. And growing up, whenever I got angry, it wasn't like, oh, we had a fist fight, I push you, push. No, if I'm fighting you, if you emotionally hurt me, I will physically hurt you until you bleed. And if I didn't see your blood, then it was not equal enough to the emotional scars you put on my heart and in my mind. So I would, like, when I had fights as a kid, which is why nobody bothered me, I would literally beat people to like bleeding, almost like to death, because I couldn't fight the adults. You know what I mean? Like I grew up to respect whatever they say you do. You don't hit them back, So whenever somebody did that to me, I physically, everything I felt, all the powerlessness, I became they call me the Hulk. That's my nickname.
I mean, before you ever even entered school, you had all this trauma in your life. So it was all ready to, you were like a spring ready to explode at the first sign of anything. Right. So, So that was, so you told us a little bit from 2 to 5, you've told us about 8. Was your whole childhood like this, growing up until the point where, you started to tell us where you had 2 children because
it leads up to that.
How do we get there? What are some of the highlights?
Okay. So, well, the thing is, I'm a very smart, intelligent child. So I got A's and B's in school. I had an irregular period from age 8 to 10. So I had a miscarriage at 8.5 years old. I was in school. So he raped me in the summertime. I think it was like either near the end of July or the beginning of August, because I was in school and it was like October, and I remember like having bad cramps, and then like blood came and I was like, oh, I'm getting my period again. And it wasn't a period. The nurse called my mom and was like, LaResse had a blood clot that was very abnormal. I want you to take her to the OBGYN. immediately thinking I was hemorrhaging, right? Because in the 70s, nobody wants to believe a kid that, is having a miscarriage, right? And then after that, my mother, she started putting my sisters and everybody against me, saying I'm violent, I'm angry, I'm crazy, I don't know what I'm talking about. I had electric therapy. Like, I was hypnotized to forget all the sexual abuse, but I still behave that way promiscuously. Go ahead, ask the question.
So I just want to, this is a lot to process in terms of everything that you experienced at such a young age. And, what really is sticking out to me, and I wanted to call out for our listeners, is that idea of a sense of childhood and that sense of safety, and how it must have from day one upended a sense of safety that you weren't able to provide for yourself because you weren't able to because you were a child. And then to try to create that sense of safety in, how else is somebody supposed to react, right? Like, oh, your mother saying you were violent, saying you were acting out, trying to isolate you. Like, I'm not quite sure how there's any other way to process this. So I just want to acknowledge that and really kind of highlight it for the listeners. That's definitely what kind of I'm feeling as I'm listening to you. And again, I want to really say that you're just such an amazing person in terms of everything that you've been through and the strength that you exude. Yeah. So I don't know if that was a question. It really wasn't, but it was just something that I felt compelled to say.
Actually, it was a question in there, even though you can't hear it, I can. So the question that you're asking is, how are you here? Right? That's right. Like, how are you here? Look, it's the same question my therapist, every time I get one, ask me, how come you're not on drugs? How come you're not in prison for the rest of your life? How come you're not in an institution? How come you can still function and you're not like in a loony bin or, full-blown schizophrenic or something, right? Like, how come? And I laugh and I said, since the age of 2, I knew there was a God. At the age of 14, I became pregnant with my daughter, and her father and I were neighbors. And the year before I became pregnant with my daughter, my mother let an 18-year-old boyfriend of mine live with us, and I was 13, and I was in 8th grade bragging about having a husband at home who I take care of while I'm in 8th grade doing math, history, English. And we broke up because he was very abusive, but he tried to kill himself to get me to stay with him. And my daughter's father heard us arguing, and him and her godfather, we were all besties. So remember when Atari and Nintendo came out? That's why we were besties, because I had them. And they heard him fighting with me, and they came and they saved me. And I cut my middle finger grabbing the blade, the knife. Like, I literally grabbed the knife out of his hand by the blade and punched him so he wouldn't kill himself, and then ran. And then they protected me. And, a year later, me and him messing around, got pregnant. So now I'm 14, and now I'm the mama, and I'm going to have somebody to love me unconditionally, and I'm gonna love that somebody unconditionally. And at 15, I had my daughter, and because of her, I went to Washington, D.C. to talk about, teen pregnancy prevention. And my first ever policy I ever passed was the 1987/88 bill, the Children's Act.
So you've been in advocacy for a long time. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, but the rest of the story. So so at this point, you have 2 children in your story?
I have one.
You have one.
And my daughter.
And the daughter. And so just to be clear, the daughter you were in a relationship with the daughter's father?
So my daughter, her father me and him are besties. We're best friends. Like my bedroom and his bedroom faced each other. Our buildings our bed like the opposite. So we would be out, talk. I would help him with his homework through the window. There was no cell phones. There wasn't no FaceTime. FaceTime was lifting up your window and putting your head out and talking to the person across from the window in the other building. And that's how we did our homework and stuff. That was FaceTime in 1980, 87, 86. And so after that incident with the abusive 18-year-old and, that's a whole nother story in itself of abuse and stuff. He tried to kidnap me. I went willingly, but I was 13, he's 18, and he was telling me that we're going to get married in Georgia, and he was trying to save me from my mom. And, my grandmother and my aunt and my uncle, they caught me 3 miles away from Georgia. Because if we made it into Georgia's laws at the time said a 13-year-old can legally be wed to a 16-year-old and have adult responsibilities. So I was in this runaway shelter in South Carolina, and my aunt and my uncle came and got me. And my grandmother just said, as you get older, you need to start making better choices than men. That's all that was said to me at 13.
And up until this point, so now till having this first daughter, have you had other encounters with the criminal legal system, with law enforcement, other than when you were 5 years old and you had to testify against your father?
I was in like middle school, and one of these girls, she threatened her. She was threatening me in the high school. The girls in the neighborhood that fight and everything. You don't want them to come to school and beat you up type of girls. Like your life is in danger. You remember in the Christmas Story? No, that type of thing. And I was like eating in lunch, and I was like, in my mind, I'm going, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get home so that these girls don't beat me? I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get out of it? So I'm eating lunch. And when I'm eating lunch, she looks at me and she goes, bitch. And I was like, bingo. So I walked over to the table. I put my elbow on the table and I just punched her in the nose while the principal watched me do it, because he was monitoring CAF that day. And I waited for him. His back was turned when I sat down. I specifically waited for him to turn around before I punched her in the nose so that he could say, LaResse, to the office. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll take my 10-day suspension, but I ain't getting that ass whooping from the project chicks. I bet you I won't.
Let me ask you this. So what you talk about the principal coming in and, you're using the principal to get out of, you're looking for the system to give you punishment to get out of getting worse, street
murder.
Having violence committed against you.
So the question I have really is, you've gone all this way, you're in school, what, if any, services are available to you for your mental health, for your well-being, to make sure you're okay? Did anybody sit you down and say, hey, LaResse, how you doing? You doing okay?
Excellent question. It is one of those questions I ask myself. Do teachers ask that question of students? Because they need to know about it more. There's more trauma in students than there are in my day. Like my day, me and my siblings are the anomaly. Today, there are more me in the classroom than there are not, unfortunately, right? So at one point, I went to Wheeler Clinic, and this is back in, again, Wheeler does different now. They different now. I'm just saying, when they first started, we talking in the 70s, and kids were kids. I was lying. If the adult said the kid was lying, then the kid was lying. Even though it's your therapist and you're telling, they're supposed to be there for your safety, they believe the parent. So only after Brenda, when I hit her in the nose, I went to juvenile court, and because I broke her nose, and the bone, like a part of her bridge, was like 3 centimeters or something from her brain, which would have killed her. And I didn't know that. I was just trying to punch And, but because of the adrenaline and the fear, it was more than just a regular like tap. I just wanted to tap her. I literally like really, really punched her and didn't even like, again, not even aware of anything. Like I was just scared to get beat up, like killed, really, right? So I went to court for that. And they demanded that I go to therapy. So I went to therapy. I had great sessions. And then the therapist asked for a family session. So then my mom and my two sisters come. And I felt like it was a pick on everything wrong with LaResse Day. And everything so my therapist asked questions and everything was like, yeah, she's too aggressive. She talks too loud. She's mean. She doesn't say anything nice. All she wants to do is fight. Like, and it sounded like my sisters were trained to say all these things about me. And yeah, so what? She's smart. Who cares? So what? She can play the violin. Nobody cares. And it was just like one of those things where you're sitting there going, for real, after I sacrificed all the sacrifice I made for you, bees, really? This is how you gonna do me? Okay. Then my mother talked. And my mother goes, I'm pretty sure LaResse told you. She has a wonderful imagination. Oh, her imagination is so wonderful. I'm sure she told you the story about the divorce, how she thought she was saving our marriage and she thought my ex-husband and I had sex with her. I'm a grown woman. Like I really needed my daughter to get my ex-husband off. And then my mother's latest boyfriend was in the room in the session at this time. And he's like, why am I here? And oh my God, and looking crazy. And so I looked at my therapist and I asked her one question. I said, are you here to help me? Are you here to listen to them lie on me? And she says, I have to consider everything that I heard.
Oh my God.
So my mother goes, and I'm pretty sure she told you about the fake miscarriage. I'm 11 when this is happening. The fake miscarriage. And, she's acknowledging everything I said as fact. But what she's saying is, it's my imagination. Then she goes on to say, well, when she was younger, about 6 or 7, we gave her shock therapy after her father and I got divorced. She took it hard. So again, and you guys wonder how I have a smile today, because God is good to me. And so I'm listening to this and I get up and I looked at everybody and I said, I'm never doing therapy again. Therapy is the worst thing ever created by man. And I said, F you to everybody in the room. And I started walking towards my grandmother's house. So I get to a payphone, remember them? And I put it, because grandma always gave us a dime and a quarter, because she didn't know if you in a certain town, it costs a quarter. And if you were local, it costs a dime. So I put the dime in, I call her number, it's still the same number. And I called her and I said, Grandma, come and get me. They lying on me. I'm crying. I was like, I'm going to kill all of them. I'm going to beat them up, Gram. You see how they hurt me, Gram? And my grandma was like, calm down. I'm coming to get you. I was like, I don't want none of I want you, Grandma. So my grandmother, she worked third shift at the VA. And she just, she came, this was a morning session. She was like, all right, I'm coming, baby. She comes and picks me up and I'm still I know how to get home. I'm walking. And I remember how she got me there in the car. I'm walking the way, the route she took to bring me to Wheeler Clinic is the route I'm walking. So me and her gonna meet somewhere in the middle. Now, during this whole time, after I left, my sisters now as adults, we talk about these things. And they said my mother convinced this woman that I was schizophrenic, that I hallucinate, and that every story I ever told her about my family is because I watched too much TV.
Oh, boy.
So, no, there was nobody.
Yeah.
There was me and God.
And just the idea that to feel like so lost and alone and the people that are there to help you are the ones that are causing the harm must have been very difficult. Yes. So how do we get from, you're at this point, you did this therapy session, then, you're 15, you have your daughter, you do some advocacy work. which must have been very empowering at the time.
Yeah. It was the first time I was heard and taken seriously and believed. My whole thing is, I don't know, maybe 4-5 years back from now. So from little until I was like 44, maybe 43, it was a big thing. Like, don't lie on me. I'm gonna tell you what I said. I'm gonna tell you how I said it. Don't lie on, because of that session.
Right.
You could have easily triggered my PTSD where I will violently attack you by lying on me. So a lot of my fights with my siblings and a lot of my fights on the streets was because somebody lied on me.
Right.
All because of that session. I can see it now, but growing up, it was like, don't lie on me because I will you up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because the truth is all I had. The truth is all I had. And that's important for someone who's going through any type of abuse, is that their truth, what is the truth, is important and is heard. I don't care what you think about who's doing the harm to me. You believe what I'm feeling, believe what I'm saying happened to me, because they did it to me. They don't see it that way because they're the ones that did it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's really important because, when we're having been definitely not through the extent that you have, but having experienced an assault myself and not being believed. Are you sure that was how it happened? Are you sure that you really want to share that with anyone else? That's going to affect your career or your life or whatever. It's very problematic, because at that point, your whole world is upside down and you're like, who can I talk to and where can I go? And you just want the pain to stop at that moment. You just want to feel the acknowledgement that harm has been committed against you. And not being believed can be a trauma trigger. I mean, I know that for myself as well. It's like, I'm telling you that this is my truth. I am telling you that this is what happened to me. And even today, for me, it's like, okay, I understand that you see it differently, but it does trigger that flow of emotions for me. It's like, and it causes me to lash out and do things that I wouldn't normally do. So I can really, that really resonates with me, LaResse.
And I'll just add on, LaResse, I believe you, and my heart goes out to you.
Thank you. That still gets me emotional, because my mother did not acknowledge that truth until 2013. 3 days before Thanksgiving, 2013. And she goes, and that's how I know, when I was feeling like my mother treated me like the other woman for my whole life. It wasn't like this thing I was making up. I kept telling my grandmother, I kept telling everybody, like, my mom's jealous of me. She keeps acting like I'm going to take her boyfriends, and I'm a kid. I mean, my mother accused me at 8 years old of wanting to have relations with my little brother's father, because he picked me up and threw me in the air and said, "Oh my God, you're so light. You look like you're solid, but you're light." Because I'm always I look and act mannish to protect from men trying to rape me. But he did that, picked me up and put me down and was like, "You're a pretty little girl. Go play outside." I got a beating.
Yeah.
And I know this is tough stuff, but I'm willing to share because I'm hoping somebody listening knows that you're not alone.
Right.
And it's not hard to move forward. It's not hard to move forward. The hard part is speaking and knowing your truth in spite of everybody else lying about that truth around you. and that was my life. So I grew up with a lot of, am I crazy, or are these people really purposefully trying to cause harm so that I don't flourish? Like, after a while, it just became, I just want to be loved. Can somebody just love me? Which is why I had my daughter. And then when I advocate, I got love from strangers. Oh, you're brilliant, LaResse. Oh my God, you're very articulate. Even though I know that's a racist slur, but at the time it was very nice. And oh, you're a spitfire. Oh, I love the way you spin the story. You're so animated, you know, and you know, like, and you know, this all the good stuff came from strangers, except for my grandfather, who passed when I was 11 and a half, 12, and my auntie Karen, who passed away last year. Those were my only two angels in my life. Everybody else was outside of my family.
So you end up, I think we've got a pretty good picture of a lot of the trauma that you lived through as a child. And then, you know, I want to get to the part of the story where you're incarcerated. Is there a way to kind of just tell us what happened and kind of really summarize the end result? And
okay, so the end result was, she comes reaching around with the gun, pointing it towards me. I close my eyes and I swing my knife and I stab her in the heart, 2.5-inch cut. And I didn't know I stabbed her. I thought I just sliced her arm and she dropped the gun. I'm in the back, I'm in shock. Next thing you know, police come, I'm getting arrested. I said, what happened to the girl? I'm concerned. I said, what's my charge? They said assault in the first degree. I said, is she okay? I didn't mean to hurt her, but they was trying to kill me. Then I'm getting fingerprinted and my charge says murder. And from that point, and then the next day I get arraigned on the 24th.
What I heard, and tell me if I interpreted this right, you had some, I'll use the word friends loosely. And there was a tremendous misunderstanding that to this day, you can't even understand. And you got to the point where you felt that your life was threatened and your children's life was threatened. And you were backed into a corner and you were protecting yourself. And in the act of protecting yourself, you had a knife in your hand and it found its way into this woman's heart, and she died as a result. Is that an accurate summary?
And if I lived in any other state, I'd have been held a hero and a super mom. But I lived in Connecticut and there's no real self-defense. Still isn't. You could drive in your car currently and have a concealed weapon and somebody walks up threatening and you can shoot them in the face and kill them. But you can't kill anybody walking in your home. If somebody walks in your home, threaten your home, if you have a back door, you got a way of escape. That's what the self-defense clause in Connecticut. So I'm now, again, my truth is being punished. So
you end up now you've had a couple of experiences with the legal system, and now this is a completely different animal, right? So you're going in, you're being treated as someone who has murdered someone. You have to go in front of a judge and all that. So what would you like to share about the whole process?
So day one, before my arraignment, I had dry heaves. I was crying because nobody told me the truth. And then I didn't know even though I saw it, I didn't want to believe it. And after my arraignment, you go in the basement, you wait, you get driven to York, got my inmate number. And my first night, they strip search you. There are LGBTQ women. And at this time, it wasn't, as prevalent as it is and people acknowledging stuff. And they would be the ones strip searching you, making sure you take showers. So again, I'm being molested, right, through the court because they want to make sure it's under safety and security, you're not bringing in your contraband. So they were extra cruel and whatever because you're a first timer. So they want to, do all the rah-rah-rahs. It was a haze. And then that night I spent by myself alone in the infirmary with about maybe 11 or 12, like 11 beds in there. And I was by myself in a white gown. with granny jaws, 2 sizes too big for me, crying about I just killed a potential friend. I didn't think I was going to go to jail because the police were just there when I got attacked by my son's father, who was trying to kill me and my son. Like, that's the thing I want listeners to understand. Your everyday life, normalcy, and experiences, you should not be projecting on an average person because you don't know what they've been through. Don't assume everybody has loving parents. Don't assume everybody has a supportive family. Don't assume everybody has financial security somewhere. Don't assume that the kid who's acting up in class is a bad attitude kid for no reason. Something's going on. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Why don't you ask them what happened to you?
Yes.
Right.
That was the question nobody ever asked me.
Right.
What happened to you?
Right. So now you go to prison for how many years?
Well, I went to trial because they tried to call, Taylor tried to send me up the river 20 to life. And I was like, I know I deserve some punishment for killing her because I took her life. It was justified because she was trying to take mine. I want to make that clear. I felt guilty for it for 18 years. I stopped feeling guilty for it a few years ago. I'm not guilty for it anymore because, if this was the old West, I would still been hailed a hero because, my draw was quicker than hers. So not to make light of the situation, but a senator, not from Connecticut, and I got to say this to always add jokes to the seriousness. He said to me, so when I told him the story, he said to me with a straight face, he said, so you brought a knife to a gunfight and won? I said, what? Never thought about it like that. And that was his way of letting me know that I should have never been in prison. I shouldn't have a criminal record. And if it happened in his state, he would immediately have my record expunged and exonerated and, things like that and stuff like that. And so I think about all the legislators I work with over the last 20 plus years, all the good stuff I've done with education, drug policy, criminal justice, prison pardon reform, like the racial ethnic impact statement exists because of what I've done, anti-discrimination for employment, ban the box for formerly incarcerated people with criminal records. Like, there's so much stuff that I've done more than anybody who's never committed a crime and do their mundane Monday 9 to 5. And all they do every November is vote. I have done more than you. So why you keep judging me for what being a good mom at that? I was a good mom, and now we got, 28 years later, and I have no good relationship with my children. I went to jail for them, and now they're adults with their own children, and we have a very strange relationship. I don't have my kids and we were so close before I went to jail. And now, when I came home, I did everything to try to, people lied to them and said, my son, his father's people told him I abandoned, I went to college. I abandoned him. So he grows up and he still carries this abandonment. Even as an adult, he knows I went to jail and what I went to jail for because he was 1.5 years old when I left. And all he heard in life was that my mom left me to go to college. I ain't seen I got a college degree while I was there, but I wouldn't have did that like that. I was taking you with me to college in Akron, Ohio, and I ended up in York, CI.
So I think this really speaks a lot to this idea of the cycles of violence, right? So there was a lot of violence that you experienced as a young child, even to the point so young that the development that you experienced was stunted in a lot of ways. And that, again, that sense of safety and the way that you were even able to kind of move through the world was changed. And then kind of moving up through a lot of different instances of trauma and living in an environment where violence was just kind of the norm. It was like, I'm going to fight and, somebody's going to come here with a gun. And, that's just kind of the environment. And then having that cycle sort of continue with parental incarceration, and then that affecting the family in that way. So these are the things that we really need to be caring about, right? How do we break these cycles? And I love that you said, somebody needed to ask me, what happened to you? Right? Because I don't think that there is a single person on this podcast that we've spoken to that didn't need that question, right? Like some sort of intervention point in their life where somebody said, what happened to you? And how can we help you? Right? So it's one thing to ask the question, but do you believe someone?
Part.
Are you offering the help?
That part.
Like, where can we go from there? Right. So I really appreciate you sharing these very painful lived experiences in order to really help people that may be going through something similar. Like, you're not alone.
There's even more pain, right? You talk about what happened with your children and the fact that just putting you into prison and separation caused this family destruction that never had to be. But you also, I'm assuming that while you were in prison, there was additional violence that you observed or were part of. So it just continued. And then you get out of prison after a number of years.
Yeah, I got raped in prison.
Oh, see?
My first roommate, the roommate that I had, she happened to grew up with the girl I killed, and she was going to shank me my first night in the room with her. The other roommates asked me to tell the story. They was like, hold on, let her tell the story. And when I told what happened, then jumped off of the bed and said, I'm glad they let you tell the story, because if they didn't, you were gonna die today. She was greased up, bandana on, everything. She had made a shank and everything. I was gonna die right there. She said I was gonna cut your throat. So yeah, violence continued in prison. Go ahead, Jason.
And the trauma, even state-induced trauma, continues to this day. Before we jumped on the podcast, you were telling me a little bit, and if this is okay to talk about, you were telling me a little bit about how you're looking for some assistance for housing, and you're going through a tremendous amount of bureaucratic red tape with folks that don't necessarily even believe what you've been through or where you are right now. And so it continues. The harm, the state-induced harm, the cultural harm, the generational harm, it's continuing. It hasn't stopped.
No.
And despite all of that, you're devoting your life to helping other people. You're devoting your life to making a difference and to helping others. And so we can give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. But I just want to say before you do, and I'll probably say again later, how commendable and honorable and what that shows about your character. So, it's an honor to know you and to speak with you and to get to know you more, and learning your story and learning the backstory, because I've known some of your story, but hearing the backstory just increases the amount of respect that I have for you, maybe 100-fold.
Oh, thank you, Jason. I remember when you came around and the struggle you were having, and I said, if nobody be your friend, I'll be your friend, because I know what it's like to be rejected everywhere you go.
Right.
So to bring it full circle, I have been homeless 5 times since I've been home from prison, and none of those times are of my own doing. And when I say that means when I'm in charge of my apartment and I'm in charge of the rent and running the house, I don't get evicted. I don't be late. I might be late depending on, working and stuff back then, but now I'm on Social Security disability, so I'll never be late. And, I work with my landlord. I let him know. Most of the times I try to pay my rent, before I was on disability, when I was a working girl, and not that kind of working girl, although I do support sex workers, right? I pay my rent like 2-3 months in advance, things like that. Like, I'm like, I want to know my neighbors. So, we can have a block party one time, barbecue in the summer, everybody know each other. I grew up like that, so I'm that kind of tenant. And right before lockdown, talk about the violence continues. Right before lockdown, I was dating this guy who was going through an ugly divorce. And because of the trauma of the marriage, he accused me of doing something I didn't do, even though I had the evidence and all this stuff, and I'm showing him and I'm talking to him. So he attacked me. And when he came to charge at me, I did, the football with your forearm press thing, and he fell back. And when he was falling back, I was trying to catch him, like, oh my God, no, don't fall. And he fell back. He hit his head a little bit on the wall. And I was like, oh my, and I'm rushing to him, woman loving her man. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You okay? You okay? And he immediately jumps up, talking about consequences, right? He immediately jumps up. I'm not afraid of you just because you killed somebody. And he leaves the bedroom, goes in the kitchen, grabs a knife and said, I will kill you. You don't threaten me. You don't put fear in my heart, with this knife in his hand. And I'm standing there with my phone like, and this happened 2020, March 17th, 2020. And that's how I ended up homeless this time. So, and 17th, on the 18th, I go to Ohio because they're talking about locking down America. And now all of my belongings is in this man's house. I'm going to go pick up and put as much as I can in my car. And her fiance goes and picks up the rest of my stuff and was at her house. But I'm now traveling with, she gets $100 check because I don't have any money. She gives it to me. I'm riding with, trying to get to Ohio on $100 away from this man. And on March 18, 2020, I'm locked down in Ohio with my sister, who helped me get better after I had my mental health episode. And then I come up out of it, and we're opening up, and I'm trying to find an apartment in Connecticut, and I'm filling out for subsidized housing because I'm on SSDI now, and I'm getting denied the housing for disability and seniors but they're not saying it's because of my felony, because, you can't do that. HUD says you cannot discriminate because of that anymore. So what they say is I'm not age appropriate. So I think that's horseshit. And we have a woman that we're helping who got commutation. She got compassionate release. There's a couple of people who got compassionate release. Well, they're older. They aged out. They're older. They got ailments. They can't find a convalescent home or any senior living space because of their convictions. I mean, I'm in a wheelchair. I could barely, I got half paralysis, but you think I'm still a threat. Like, come on, America. I'm tired. Like, where is the sensibility in this? Where's your 1 + 1 = 2? Okay, common sense. And all it is about this terror of what an inmate looks like, what a criminal looks like. Well, guess what? According to my charge, I am a murderer. According to my charge, I am a killer. According to my charge, I'm a violent, you shouldn't trust me individual. That is the lie. My charge is the lie.
You do a lot of advocacy work. Let's kind of round this out by talking about how people can support your efforts, support you. What are different things that they can do to, let's give you a little bit of, let's amplify your voice a little here and give you an opportunity to, after people get to hear your story, just let them step up and help a little.
So paving your pain into power is a catchphrase that I use because I live it, right? And so you can't have power without utilizing your pain. I do book kind of special events because I'm a survivor of mass abuse, but I do book events where I sit down. Not a lot of authors sit with the readers and get to ask the questions anymore. People don't do that. I still do that. So if you would like, you have my book and you want to start a healthy wellness book survivors group or something, want to use my book for it, I'll be more than glad to show up. I will sign everybody's book. And we have, lunch, tea, or whatever you want to do. And we'll talk and we'll heal together because I incorporate coping skills like meditation, tapping, and positive affirmations. And more importantly, I want to let everybody know I am not happy-go-lucky and faking it. I'm really happy in spite of my current situation of homelessness. I am very happy because I know I did not live through any of my experiences to keep them to myself as a victim, but to share them so that we together, all of us who've been abused, can be thrivers, not just survivors. That is paving your pain into power. And so if you want to reach me, LaResse Harvey, for any speaking engagements, motivational, or if you want me as a reentry coach, I charge you $250 an hour. You can, and that doesn't mean I have a job or anything, because nobody has paid me yet $250 an hour to be a reentry coach. But you can. I'll help you get where you need to be. You can reach me at Buttons, that's BUTTONS, Journey, JOURNEY, 2018, that's 2018 at gmail.com. That's Buttons Journey 2018 at gmail.com. Now, if you are someone who's so inclined who want to have a conversation with me, I don't even care if you mad about what I said today, you want to cuss me out, I will give you my cell phone number because we can talk about it. Because I can learn from your hate and you can learn from my love. And that's why we're agreeing, because it's divine love. It's the heart chakra. And my number is area code 562-318-7703. That's area code 562-318-7703. Now, my phone is, of course, equipped for, crank calls and stuff. So if you really want to have a conversation with me, I say text me first before you call. Because if you call, you might go straight to voicemail.
If somebody is listening to this show and they are thinking to themselves, I really connected, I've been through a lot of the same things. What would you say if you could summarize it in one sentence? Like, what would you say to somebody who's just coming out of a period of incarceration? What advice would you give to them in one sentence?
I made the promise I'm never coming back to jail. A lot of people make that promise, but they don't mean it. I meant it. No matter what happens on the outside, don't go back to jail. Don't feel guilty about calling the cops on somebody. Don't feel guilty about testifying against somebody who caused you harm if it warrants that. You don't go back to jail. Don't go back to jail. And there's more help beyond your family that actually understands.
I have a final question, and that is, you've had people in your journeys, particularly in the last few years, I'm sure, who have really stood by you and helped lift you up. Is there anybody that you'd like to mention and give a shout out, like appreciation?
So I'll give a shout out to an organization. I would like to shout out Community Partners in Action, because they helped me throughout my reentry life, not just the first 2 years, which I think is stupid because collateral consequences last as long as I got that criminal record, right? And anytime I needed assistance, from coming home and wanting to go to college to us as a nonprofit getting contracts with CPA, I want to thank CPA. I also want to thank the Commission on Women and Children, Denise Drummond and Steve Hernandez, for just taking the risk of letting me do Sexual Abuse to Prison, the Forgotten Videos conversation series. I got a Swan Award for that. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I am a walking historian. I am inducted in the first prison ever created in America as the 2020 Grade 8, Connecticut Hall of Change Grade 8, and it's for formerly incarcerated people who have made a significant difference in their community and the state at large. And they decide, they go through this whole rigmarole to see who gets into it. And so I am one of the original 8 from 2020, LaResse Harvey, Grade 8. Go to East Granby, Old Newgate Prison to see the stories of all the Grade 8s, because we just inducted the 2021s. And we're looking for 2022. So if you need or want somebody to be honored and be walking historian, and they're never going back to jail, because let's be clear, this is for people who's never going back to jail, ever. And you can reach out to Connecticut Hall of Change at gmail.com. or you can look on their Facebook page for Connecticut Hall of Change. I mean, Google it, use your computer wisely. Google it and you get all the contact. Once incarcerated, please subscribe to our YouTube page, subscribe to our Instagram, like us on Facebook, all that great media stuff. And also my pages, because I have Civic Trust Public Lobbying Company and I have Buttons Journey too on Facebook and, I think YouTube too. So yeah, you can get a lot of content. I'm looking at 23 years of freedom here.
People are going to be able to find you. So, LaResse, we really appreciate you coming and speaking with us today, all of the wonderful work that you're doing. We are quite aware of the Great Eight. A lot of our guests we've had quite a few on. We've had Daryl and Iron and so we love that program, Tahiba as well. So we really love that program.
I saved Tahiba's life in jail. We did a play about it. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
Oh boy, no, that's great. That'll have to be for our second podcast interview. But in any event, we are so glad that you're able to be with us today and all the wonderful work that you're doing, really paving that pain into power for not just yourself, but so many other people. And we will definitely be following everything you're doing. I did see the videos with the women and children. So that was really great. I followed those as well. So I encourage people to check those out. Jason, any last thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I know we could probably fill another 2 episodes with the things that we left out. It's just your stories, the way you tell your stories, the stories that you have, the fact that you're here smiling. I just hope that this homelessness situation is straightened out fairly quickly and that your life just gets better from here on out.
Everybody call Bristol Housing Authority and say, let LaResse come back, give her her ticket. I'm already in Connecticut, but, I keep driving back and forth. That's a lot of gas money, just to sleep in safe areas at certain times of the year. So,
right.
And my car, no less. Like, I'm grateful right now. Today, I had a place to stay, but tomorrow I will be back in my car again. And in this day and age, somebody like me is not special privilege. I went there, fill out. I gave everything, even my provisional pardon information. It shouldn't be that difficult.
No.
When somebody's in need. And absolutely. I will be doing educational outreach on, if you want to join me as an individual resident of Connecticut concerned about housing and having a criminal record, I will be looking forward to working with you. Once again, Buttons Journey at 2018@gmail.com on housing certificates for people with criminal records specifically, because we are a high population.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on your progress, and we'll also probably be partnering on a number of projects going forward. I'm sure that'll be fun. And so for that, I'm going to close by saying until next time, Amber.
We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Amplified Voices, a podcast lifting the experiences of people and families impacted by the criminal legal system. For more information, episodes, and podcast notes, visit amplifiedvoices.show.